These are the 7 levels of why you haven't started your YouTube channel. Most people think it's because they need better equipment or more confidence. But the deeper you go, the more psychological it becomes. And level 7, that's the one that keeps most creators stuck. So let's get into it. And at level 1, I need better equipment. This is where most people start out. With the camera, with the microphone, with the lights, with the editing software. You can convince yourself that once your studio setup looks professional enough, then you'll finally begin. But here's the potential problem. You risk turning the equipment into emotional armor, because researching equipment feels productive, safe. You don't have to risk embarrassment watching camera reviews. You don't have to feel vulnerable comparing microphones. And look, quality matters to a certain degree, but YouTube is filled with people who started out with terrible cameras with awful audio. What separated them wasn't equipment, it was movement. They started before they felt ready. And over to level number 2, I need more knowledge first. This one feels intelligent, responsible. You tell yourself, I'm just learning before I begin. So you watch the tutorials, you study the algorithm, you consume the productivity videos, you learn about titles and thumbnails and SEO and retention curves, and suddenly 6 months disappear. You know everything about YouTube, except how it feels to actually be on YouTube. And that's the trap. You can learn about swimming forever, but eventually you have to get in the water, because the real lessons doesn't come from tutorials. They come from uploading, from bad videos, from awkward silences, from poor pacing, from watching your own footage and cringing. That's where creators are born, not in preparation, in repetition. And over to level number 3, I don't know what niche to pick. You probably think there's this perfect niche out there, that one magical decision that guarantees success. So you overanalyze everything. Should I do self-improvement, gaming, commentary, motivation, storytelling? And because you can't decide, starting actually becomes more difficult. And here's what nobody tells beginners. Your niche usually reveals itself through creating, not before. Most creators evolve into their niche. Yes, their first videos are messy, confused, experimental, but over time, patterns appear. You discover what excites you, what drains you, what people respond to, what kind of creator you actually are. And YouTube isn't a personality test you pass before entering. It's a discovery process. And clarity often comes after action, not before it. And over to level number 4, fear of judgment. Now this is where things become emotional, because now it's no longer about YouTube. It's about people. What if they laugh? What if someone I know finds my channel? What if people think I'm cringe? And that word right there, cringe, has killed more dreams than failure ever has. Because nobody wants to look awkward while learning publicly. But then again, every single creator you look up to once looked inexperienced. Every single one. The difference is, they survive the awkward phase instead of running from it. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The fear of judgment never fully goes away. You just gradually stop giving it authority over your decisions. Because eventually you realize something important. Most people are too busy worrying about themselves to spend that much time thinking about you. And over to level number 5, perfectionism disguised as preparation. This level is dangerous because it looks productive. You rewrite the script again and again. You re-record the video or intro again and again. You tweak tiny little details nobody will ever notice, and your brain keeps telling you this just needs a little more work. But perfectionism isn't really about quality. It's about protection. Because if the video is never finished, it can never fail, right? Perfectionism creates an illusion of control in an environment filled with uncertainty. But the cost is brutal. nothing gets published. And the longer you stay in perfectionism, the scarier uploading becomes. Because now the video carries emotional weight. Months of pressure, months of expectations, months of fear. Meanwhile, creators who improve quickly, they publish, adjust, learn, repeat, messily. They understand something perfectionists struggle with. Done teaches you more than perfect ever will. And over to level number 6, your identity hasn't caught up yet. This level goes deeper because we're talking about identity. You say you want to become a creator, but internally, you still see yourself as someone who watches other creators, not someone who is a creator. And that gap creates resistance. Your mind starts questioning everything. And here's what's strange. Sometimes the hardest part of starting YouTube is allowing yourself to believe you deserve to actually exist there, to take up space, to speak, to create. Your brain wants proof before identity, but proof usually comes after repeated action, not before. At some point, you have to let your actions introduce you to a new version of yourself, a version that creates, a version that uploads, a version that stops waiting for permission. And over to level 7, you're afraid of what happens if you actually try. This is the deepest level and probably the hardest one to admit, because maybe it's not failure you're most afraid of. Maybe it's certainty. Right now, as long as you haven't truly tried, your dream is still untouched, protected. Potential still exists. The moment you genuinely go for it, you risk finding out the truth. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Maybe you succeed, maybe you struggle. But once you truly try, you can no longer hide behind what if? What if it works out? What if I succeed? What if I fail? And for a lot of people, that uncertainty feels safer than reality. So they postpone, delay, over-prepare, distract themselves. Not because they don't care, but because deeply trying means emotionally risking something. And that's terrifying. But here's what I want to leave you with. Every creator you look up to eventually reached a moment where they had to stop protecting the dream and finally test it. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, just honestly. And maybe that's where you are right now, standing at the edge, knowing the only thing left to do is hit record. So yeah, that's the 7 levels of why you haven't started your YouTube channel. And the question is, which level are you stuck on? And more importantly, what happens if you finally move past it?